This weekend marks 100 days. Of what, you ask? The Trump presidency, of course. So yes, I'm playing the Trump card this week. In those 100 days, we've had more protests, Twitter spats, travel bans, resignations, investigations, and the biggest talks of walls since, well, I don't know when. Say what you will about the Donald, but he is certainly a man trying to make his mark. He took us all by surprise a few weeks ago when he launched more than 50 cruise missiles against Syria. And then he dropped the mother of all bombs on Islamic State fighters in Afghanistan. Those are big, bold moves that I respect him for. But the situation with North Korea is much more concerning. And I can't help thinking it's time to chill out. There's a real possibility of conflict over there, and for the first time in my life, I find myself actually worrying about the prospect of a nuclear war. The recent meeting between the White House and the Senate sounded more diplomatic, and long may that continue. But I worry that we are watching the ultimate willy-waving contest at play between two unpredictable men, and if I'm right, the consequences of this do not bear thinking about.
I can't even say it, Kim Jong-un is, he is starving his people. Millions died in the famine in 1990 when his dad was in charge. And for years, the West has appeased both his father and Kim Jong-un. And I think we can't go on appeasing him in this way. Yes, he's developing a bomb, but I think all Trump's doing now, and you said it in your intro, he's willy-waving. And what he's doing is he's saying to him, OK, you're threatening us, you're going to say you're going to drop a missile wherever. I'll just show you what I've got. So in the past 2 weeks, he sent a flotilla of warships to Darwin to do tests. He set off a whole load of tests this week in South Korea. Just say, you think you can drop a bomb? Let me show you that I can. And also, and you're right, he's been very, in the Senate, he is talking more gently. He's saying there are lots of options and that we can talk face-to-face or you can talk to China and all the rest of it. But what he also said, this was a key phrase last night, one of the Navy guys said, strategic patience is over. And that means doing nothing and threatening the US and threatening the world. It's finished. So I think I don't think there's going to be a nuclear war. I don't think so for a second. Kim Jong-un has no money. He gets, the country lives off handouts from China. He has no money. He starves his people to pay for the nuclear weapons. And I don't think it's going to happen. And I think at some point somebody has to face him up. And I think Trump is the man to face him up.
Well, it scares me. It reminds me of my brothers when they used to play in their bedroom with these toy soldiers, and it was my arm is bigger than your. It's scary to me.
Trump's army is bigger, and that's the point. And Kim Jong-un wants to survive. He doesn't want to die. He doesn't want his country razed. He knows the minute he sets a missile off, the US is going to intercept it, and he's finished. The whole country's finished.
I listened to an interview today with Paul Wolfowitz. Now, Wolfowitz was the man who you remember was one of the hawks who put George W. Bush and the Americans into Iraq. And what was interesting, who you'd have thought would be very much behind what Trump's saying, what Wolfowitz said is he doesn't know what you can do effectively. He said sanctions will make no difference because actually the people
he doesn't care.
They don't buy anything or do anything. They haven't got any money. So I mean, the question you have to ask is, OK, if you're not going to, what does happen? I mean, it's all very well putting all your weapons there and doing it. What happens?
Well, you tell him to stop.
No, but and he doesn't.
Well,
then what happens?
Well, you've got to wait until he's going to take.
Yeah, but he doesn't. Then what happens?
You take him out.
Well, if he sets a weapon off, yes, of course you have.
You said if he doesn't demilitarise.
You said if he does. I said if he sets one off, we intercept it, and that's why I think he's
quite high risk, Carol. Though relying on the US to intercept a missile once it's been launched.
For decades and decades, he's been a dangerous man with a dangerous toy, and he's been threatening the West for decades. How long are we going to let that go on?
What Michelle is talking about, it's what with the new paradigm, which is we've got two unpredictable men.
Yeah.
And my real anxiety about this is not, we're not going to stop him starving his people into submission. My real anxiety is lies not in North Korea, it lies in the US. And that knock on the door at 3 a.m. when they say, Mr. President, we're sorry to wake you up, you've got 5 minutes to take a decision.
Well,
That
he'll be
is
saying,
the
I'm sorry,
scary
I'm
thing.
tweeting at the moment. So
So what's the solution?
Well, the Chinese foreign minister in March, he said that he feels like it's two accelerating trains powering towards each other with neither side wanting to give way, and he's worried about head-on collision. That's what I feel.
It's interesting you mentioned China, because if we actually study it by results, and I think we all accept that China is key to bringing about any kind of solution to North Korea, notwithstanding that a lot, as Carol rightly says, a lot of people have said a lot of nasty things, they've never actually done anything, it is worth recalling that earlier this month, for the first time ever, China actually sent back some coal imports from North Korea. They effectively blockaded them, and they sent them back. So that's a big trade knock for North Korea. Now, I take your point, the people, they won't even know, poor souls, but he will be aware. Now, so then they sent some more coal, North Korea, and that's been allowed, quotes, in for humanitarian reasons. If by changing the mood music, Trump can at least start to make China realise, actually, this is a new... and I don't agree with facing each other off and finding tanks, that's ridiculous. But if you can get through trade, because you know that's the way, if we can get through somehow trade, if you get China on side, if you get China signing up to some kind of anti-North Korea deal, then you might get somewhere.
I think you've got a real point. I think China is even the most frightened nation of all, because they're seen as the puppet master for North Korea. And they're even more worried about what Trump's going to do, far more worried, I would imagine, than the North Koreans are.
So on Monday, Donald Trump said we had to do something, and I actually agree with him. Just listen to what he says.
The status quo in North Korea is also unacceptable, and the Council must be prepared to impose additional and stronger sanctions on North Korean nuclear and ballistic missile programs. This is a real threat to the world, whether we want to talk about it or not. North Korea is a big world problem, and it's a problem we have to finally solve.
This guy cannot be allowed to develop a nuclear weapon. And he has been his weapons development program has been going on for decades. And what happens is, and what happened in the Bush era, if you remember, there was a food for weapons deal where, it was, we give you food, you stop making your weapons.
Do it with trade, not tanks. Do it with trade, not tanks.
But
That is the way.
He's not going to employ any tanks. It's just all show. Do you believe he's actually going to set anything off into North Korea? Trump.
No, I think the checks and balances are seen there. But you are dealing with a man. You are dealing with a madman. You have to try to, and using words such as needs to be finally solved. That's it. Just
but you listen to Trump there, and that's simple stuff to say, isn't it? She's gone on too long, and we got to do something. Well, what? Tell me what you can actually do.
Well, when Pence went off to Korea, he realised that it was far more complicated, and actually the rhetoric is now much more about diplomacy than about action, which I think is a great relief.
So what about broadening
do the same as we did with Iran. Do a deal, and then you take away your nuclear weapons and we give you a deal.